I thought I was alone that night. Just me, the storm, and the city that never sleeps. But the moment I saw her curled in the snow beneath the marble steps of my building, everything I believed about success, silence, and survival began to unravel. What kind of world lets brilliance freeze in the dark, 2 feet from warmth? I didn't plan to stop. I didn't plan for her to change everything. If you've ever believed that no one should fall through the cracks, not in winter, not in the wealthiest zip code in Manhattan, then go ahead and like and subscribe. This isn't just a story about money or miracles. It's about what happens when the world forgets someone, and how one choice can remind them they matter. I was coming out of the boardroom around 11:47 p.m., the type of late hour that's normal when your company has a $9 billion merger on the table and your legal team's working overtime to make sure nobody walks away with blood on their hands. The storm had swallowed the city whole. Snow piled in soft mountains across sidewalks, and the streets were silent but for the occasional gust of wind that screamed between the towers like a warning. I didn't notice her at first, but what? People don't expect to find others sleeping under staircases in neighborhoods where condos go for 20 million and dogs wear sweaters more expensive than suits. But something made me pause. Maybe it was the way the snow hadn't settled in one corner. Maybe it was the glint of something metallic, a broken phone, a badge, half buried beneath a pair of trembling fingers. I turned my headlamp toward it, and that's when I saw her. Claire, my assistant, wearing the same navy blazer she'd had on during our morning meeting, legs tucked awkwardly beneath her, back pressed against cold stone, shivering so violently I could hear her teeth from 6 feet away. Her face was pale, lips tinged blue, eyes fluttering with the kind of half-conscious desperation I'd only ever seen on battlefield footage and late-night yard documentaries. Claire, I said it like a question, though I knew damn well it was her. I'd hired her myself 6 months ago after she crushed a third-round interview with my chief of staff. Sharp, analytical, kept her head down. Never once missed a deadline. I'd always thought she was just another overachiever from some polished school with a spotless life. I'd never been more wrong. Jesus, Claire. I dropped to one knee, brushing snow from her arm. Her skin was ice. I peeled off my cashmere overcoat and wrapped it around her shoulders, then hit the button on my earpiece to call my driver. Bring the car to the south entrance. Emergency. My voice cracked in a way I hadn't heard since my father's funeral. She stirred then, just barely. Her lashes fluttered like butterfly wings, and her cracked lips moved. I leaned in. I didn't have anywhere else. The rest trailed off into a whisper too fragile to hold. She passed out before the car pulled up. I scooped her into my arms, snow soaking my slacks, and carried her the 30 feet to warmth. My driver took one look and floored it toward my building. No questions. By the time we reached the penthouse, my in-house medic was waiting, alerted via security protocol the moment I flagged the situation. Claire lay on the heated leather couch, wrapped in 2 blankets, and 4 already hooked into her arm. My team worked like a well-oiled machine, and I stood in the corner, useless, trying to reconcile how the same girl who organized the Tokyo expansion files just last Thursday was now on the verge of hypothermic shock less than 50 feet from the heated marble floor of my lobby. She's going to be okay, Dr. Lin said eventually. But another hour out there, and she didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. The silence said enough. I nodded, jaw tight. My phone buzzed with updates about the acquisition, but I didn't check them. I stared at Claire, and then I did something I'd never done before. I sat beside someone and just waited. When she finally woke up, it was 4:13 a.m. Her voice was hoarse, eyes fluttering open like someone surfacing from deep water. She looked around, confused. "Am I in your apartment?" She whispered, like it was more shocking than the fact she was alive. "Penthouse," I corrected automatically, then winced. She blinked, and I caught the moment she remembered where I found her. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice cracking. "I didn't mean for anyone to see. I just needed to not die," I said, more sharply than intended. She flinched. I exhaled, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Sorry, that came out wrong. I'm not angry. What happened?" She looked away. "My sublet was illegal. Got evicted when the landlord found out. I tried couch surfing. Friends helped, but I ran out of people. I thought maybe just a week more and I could find something, save a little. But the nights got colder. I'd stay at the office as late as I could. I didn't want to ask. I was afraid if you found out, I'd be fired." I stared at her, stunned. Fired? You think I'd fire someone for being human? Her laugh was dry. You don't get it. In companies like yours, being poor is seen as weak, vulnerable, replaceable. The words punched harder than I expected, because she wasn't wrong. Somewhere along the way, I'd stopped noticing the people behind the reports, behind the numbers. Claire wasn't just one assistant out of hundreds. She was someone who had nowhere to go, and still showed up every day like her life didn't depend on it. But it did. You're staying here, I said, standing abruptly, until we figure this out. Her eyes widened. Mr. Royce, I can't. You can, I said. And you will. I didn't sleep the rest of that night. Instead, I watched the snow keep falling, blanketing the city in the same silence that almost swallowed her whole. Something had to change, not just for Claire, but for every person like her still out there, hidden beneath marble steps, hoping someone might stop long enough to see them. Claire didn't speak much the next morning. I found her sitting at the kitchen counter in one of my button-down shirts, sipping tea like she wasn't trying to figure out how to disappear into the marble. She kept apologizing for bleeding through the cracks of my world. I told her to stop, but it didn't take. You can't just erase years of believing you're a burden in one conversation, not when the system trains you to feel that way. But there was something else in her silence, something that made my skin prickle. Not just embarrassment, but fear. Of what? She wouldn't say. Not yet. That day at the office, I saw things I'd never noticed. People flinching when executives barked. Assistants whispering about who got cut after missing one deadline. HR memos framed like threats. And I realized, Claire wasn't the only one snowstorm away from collapse. I started asking questions, the kind that made department heads sweat. I called for a full audit of employee housing stipends, wellness budgets, emergency fund policies. You'd think I'd detonated a bomb. Is this because of your assistant? One VP sneered. No, I said. It's because I finally looked down. That night, Claire offered to leave. I can stay at a hostel, she said. Or a shelter. I'm not trying to take advantage. I asked her if she even heard herself. You almost died in the snow because you were too proud to tell me you couldn't afford rent, and now you're worried I think you're taking advantage? Claire, this is not your fault. She sat back, stunned, like no one had ever said that before. I wanted to ask more. About her parents. Her past. What brought her to this city and made her think survival meant silence. But she changed the subject. You ever hear of Horizon? She asked. The tech nonprofit? I nodded. Yeah, they folded last year. I built their backend when I was 19, she said, looking away. For equity. That equity became worthless after their founder got caught embezzling. I nearly dropped my drink. You built it. The whole architecture. They just slapped their name on it. My heart started pounding. Why didn't you list that on your resume? Because no one cares when you're not connected. I didn't have a fancy school or references. Just code. And I got used to people taking it from me. I couldn't stop staring. The girl sleeping under my stairs had once built systems that helped feed thousands, and no one even knew. I suddenly saw how the world had failed her. Not in some grand, villainous way, but through 1,000 paper cuts of neglect. Claire, I said carefully, why were you really sleeping there that night? Why not call anyone? Not even a shelter? She went quiet. Then she said, because it wasn't the first time. And shelters, they don't always feel safer than the street. Especially if you're a woman. Especially if people know you're smart. That sentence hit me harder than anything else. Not because it was dramatic, but because it wasn't. It was just a fact. Cold. Ordinary. Like suffering had become so expected that it didn't even need adjectives anymore. I didn't sleep again that night. I pulled up everything I could on Horizon, on the software Claire said she built. I had my CTO verify it line by line. By 4 a.m., he called me in disbelief. Who was this woman, he asked. Because if she's telling the truth, and she is, we've been ignoring a damn genius. That morning, I brought Claire into the glass conference room overlooking the city. Just the two of us. I slid a contract across the table. VP of Innovation, I said. Your salary starts at $410,000. You'll oversee the ethical implementation wing, and you'll report only to me. No strings. Just a chance to build what you never got credit for. She stared at the paper like it was a trap. You don't owe me this, she whispered. I know, I said, but the world owes you. I'm just catching it up. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She just reached for the pen, hands shaking like the moment meant more than she could say. And it did. Because she wasn't just signing a promotion. She was reclaiming every second she'd been made to feel small. Every night in the cold. Every no dressed up like a not now. But I still had one question. One I couldn't shake. Claire, I asked as she signed. Why'd you show up to work every day like nothing was wrong? She looked me straight in the eye. Because it wasn't wrong. Not with me. I just couldn't afford to let the world think otherwise. For a long time after she left the room, I sat there staring out at the city. And I realized something. Sometimes, the people who keep your empire standing aren't the ones at the top. They're the ones sleeping in the shadows beneath it. Silent, unseen, and extraordinary. It's strange how someone can change your life not with noise, but with quiet. Claire never asked for more than a desk, a job, a paycheck. But what she gave was vision. Within weeks of her promotion, the company felt different. Staff started whispering about the Royce shift, policies changing, innovation flowing, but with a new emphasis on equity, ethics, and real support. Claire did that. She brought humanity into a place that once measured everything in quarterly returns. And then one rainy afternoon, as I stepped into her office to check in, I noticed a worn, creased envelope on her desk. She turned it over, slow. From my mother, she said. Left behind a long time ago. Inside was a folded paper with one sentence written in thick black ink. If no one opens the door for you, build one. Claire looked up at me, tears forming but not falling. I thought I was building doors for myself. Turns out, I was building them for others, too. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. We both knew what this was now. Not just a job. Not just a recovery. It was a new beginning. Months later, at a company town hall, Claire stood before 700 employees and told her story. Not all of it, but enough to make them listen. When she finished, the room was silent. Then a standing ovation erupted that I'll never forget. That night, I walked her to the car. We stood on the same marble steps where I'd found her months ago, where everything started. The snow had begun to fall again. She looked at me and smiled. You saved me, she said. I shook my head. No, Claire. You were never lost. I just finally saw you. And for the first time in a long time, I understood what it meant to be seen, too.